In the event of an emergency, a member of the flight crew shall direct you to the nearest exit. Abby Capshaw shifted nervously in the narrow confines of her tiny window seat. One of these days, she vowed to herself, when she was long past high school and making an actual salary instead of a paltry allowance and some money from babysitting, she was going to spring for a first-class ride. The plane had taken off, like 3 seconds ago, and already her knees were cramping. Normally, Abby would be paying attention to the announcements that the captain was making over the loudspeaker, or craning her neck to see the flight crew's safety demonstration. She was a firm believer that one could never be too cautious. She'd seen Castaway. It was important to be prepared. And Abby was nothing if not the responsible type. She was spacing now for 2 very specific reasons. For starters, she couldn't understand a word that the captain was saying. She knew he was speaking in English, because this was a British Airways flight, and, well, he was English. But she had quickly discovered, with no small amount of dismay, that apparently a British accent was actually kind of tough to decipher in any context other than a Hugh Grant movie. Since boarding Flight 0178 to London's Heathrow Airport, Abby had found herself doing more politely ambiguous nodding than she had, pretty much, ever done in her whole life, family reunions notwithstanding. So listening to the captain was essentially an exercise in futility, though she did note with some amusement that he pronounced direct as direct. Just like Hugh Grant. The other reason that Abby was slightly less concerned than usual about hearing the announcements had to do with why she was on this plane to begin with. The whole responsible type thing. As in, she was tired of it, and she was looking for a change. Starting now. Abby's junior year of high school had begun with a vow. Things were going to be different this year. Last fall, on September 13th, Abby had turned 16. She was a Virgo. Normally, she didn't pay all that much attention to things like horoscopes and the zodiac. But her best friend Danny Schumacher was a huge believer in it, and as such, kept Abby well informed on the subject. According to Who Do the Stars Think You Are, a dubious source in Abby's humble opinion, being a Virgo meant that Abby was a hard-working, dedicated personality who wants perfection in all you do, because you are very organized. You make the perfect party planner. In other words, totally boring. Except for that party planner thing, which didn't so much apply to her life. Though one time her principal asked her to put together a casual going-away thing for her English teacher. But there was nothing sexy about a party your principal asked you to plan. Abby had to admit to herself that life in New York City was pretty much okay. She went to a nice private school where the kids were decent and down to earth, even though most of them had a lot of money. Definitely more money than she had. Well, technically, more than her parents. She got very good grades and tutored through a peer-to-peer program. She had a small, close-knit circle of friends. Maybe she wasn't captain of the cheerleading squad or anything like that, but she fit in and felt well-liked. Terminally boring. She had discovered that she was a little vanilla. Actually, way more than a little. She needed some flavor, some hot fudge or colored sprinkles. Ideally, she could spin vanilla into hot fudge sundae. The goal had been to put the plan into action over the course of junior year. But things hadn't quite worked out the way Abby'd planned. Her parents were completely overprotective of her. Not that she'd ever given them reason to be. So unfair. Making her stay home most Friday nights for family time and forbidding her to date until she was 17. 17 was ancient. 17 was senior year. By then, everyone in school would have paired off, and she'd be lucky to go to the prom with her cousin Jeff. Clearly, that was out of the question. Things had to change, and fast. Biscuits? Abby felt a tap at her arm, and looked up to see a cheery blonde flight attendant beaming away at her. "Huh?" she asked. "Biscuits, love. A package." Abby peered at the plastic package, trying to decipher what was inside. It was definitely something of the edible variety, that much was for sure. But as a general rule, she liked to have a vague sense of what she was eating before she dove in. Then again, she was sort of hungry. She nodded and took the snack. If nothing else, It was a crash course in British culture. Something to drink? Abby shrugged. Water? Certainly. Fizzy or still? Tap. Plain. Still. Abby stammered. The flight attendant passed a small, chilled bottle across the row. Abby took her drink and placed it down on her tray, then ripped open the package of biscuits.